Hello, everyone. Today I am going to be discussing the new album from Birdy. This is the UK singer named Jasmine van den Bogaerde. Her stage name is Birdy. Her newest album, which is her fourth overall, just landed last Friday, April 30th, 2021. And I'm really excited to talk about it because this is an album we've been waiting for many, many years. Her preceding record, Beautiful Lies, came out in March of 2016. So it's been over 5 years now. And she has said that some of the songs on this record she has written as long as 4 years ago. So it's really been close to her heart for quite some time. She did release, however, a 4-song EP called Piano Sketches last November. So we got a few songs ahead of the album release this spring and winter. To tide us over, I reviewed that on this channel, so I will link my review of it in the description, as well as my review of Beautiful Lies, one of my favorite album of hers. And so those are there if you're interested. And then let's get into this new record. We've got 16 songs here to talk about. We got the album lead single Surrender in January, and I also did film a video on that song, so I will link that in the description. However, I did not end up getting around to filming a video for any of the other singles that she released preceding this album. I had planned on making a dual track review on Loneliness, which was the official second single, as well as the promo single she released, Deepest Lonely. These came out around February and March. I was going to make a video on it, and then I just got a little too busy. And so unfortunately, here we are now with the full album, but I'm getting to talk about it all here, and it is what it is. She then also released the third single, Secondhand News, a few weeks ago. So we got 4 songs in anticipation of the record, and in my Surrender review, I spoke about how, it was obviously apparent that, we didn't know if the whole record was going to sound this way, that she wanted to take things in a much more acoustic, stripped-back direction this time around. Her last album, Beautiful Lies, was very dramatic. It was very melodramatic. It was very theatrical. We had a lot of interesting Eastern instrumentation coming in on tracks like Growing Pains. We had a really powerful synth pop song mixed with wonderful piano chords in Keeping Your Head Up, which was a huge radio hit for her. This album is a lot more understated. It is very much just her and the acoustic guitar and the piano. We do get some strings coming in parts. We don't really get any in the way of synth production, just some atmospheric effects. And it's really just a meditation on her and her songwriting craft. Definitely some Laurel Canyon, Joni Mitchell vibes coming through very strong. I think Surrender obviously sounded very 70s, and this was a perfect, teaser for how the rest of the album was going to sound, as this record is definitely channeling, the Ladies of the Canyon energy. The Joni Mitchell Blue album comes to mind. Some of those soft, sweet folk melodies that she is deftly weaving together here, along with the very open, heart on your sleeve lyricism. Birdy talks about how when Beautiful Lies came out, she was only 20 years old. She hadn't gone through a lot of heartbreak and stuff that really caused her to, in this album, really dive a lot deeper into her own dealings with romance and heartbreak. She was in a really strong relationship, and then that fell apart sometime a few years ago. And a lot of what gives us this record such emotional power is the way she so candidly expresses the pain of coming out of such a devastating breakup. It is something that, definitely gives this record a very close to home feel for anyone who has struggled with loneliness. And there is such a wisdom to her lyrics and how she speaks about dealing with moving on and feeling as though your world has collapsed because this person has left you, but at the same time, you are aware that you are better off probably, and so are they, moving on and moving forward. It's just not going to be easy. So this record is a real tribute to all of the trials and tribulations that young romance can give us. Young heart, she is now 24 years old, turning 25 this June. And so this is definitely a testament to the rigmarole of relationships in your 20s, where you feel things so powerfully and so strongly, and yet things also fizzle and break apart just as devastatingly. And the album cover is definitely inviting us in to a folkier, by the fireside sound. This, like I said, is not nearly as dramatic of a record with the costuming and the visuals. This was just about her sitting down with the guitar, with that warm blanket around her, a cup of tea, and or some coffee on a rainy day, looking out the window, playing some chords on the piano. There were a bunch of songs off of piano sketches that I have a feeling were probably originally meant to be on this record, and several of the songs that she put on this work could have easily fit on that piano sketches EP. The two projects really feel like they're coming from the same row of work. And one could almost see it attached as extra bonus tracks. So 16 songs is a decent length for a record. She says this record was really hard for her to make, and it's one of the reasons why it took so long. She really wanted to meditate on these songs for quite some time, and I really feel that in the way they're composed. I appreciate that she didn't want to rush this thing out. Taking 5 years, especially when she was, what, 12 years old when she first started really making music, or I have no idea how old she was, but she was very young. I mean, her first album came out in 2011. She was 14 when her first album was being made. So she's been working for quite some time, and she acknowledged she needed to take a little bit of a gap year after Beautiful Lies and touring to process what she was going to do next. The opening track is the short intro, The Witching Hour. Just some really sparkling, mystical arpeggios leading us in to the sonic, the atmospheric bird sounds of an ambient, peaceful afternoon in some garden or some park, which is definitely the energy and the atmosphere I always envision when listening to Birdy's music. There is something so pastoral about the folkiness of it, and the earthy mixed with atmospheric, pastel cloud skies, the English countryside, farmland, giant oak trees, cedar trees, perennial gardens. There's just this feel of strolling through some lavish country estate that comes to my mind whenever I listen to her work. And that's something I really, really love. It's like the aesthetic I'm 100% here for. And I was hoping that on Young Heart we would get more of that. Although I'll admit, Young Heart definitely has a slightly more California West Coast feel to some of the, guitar melodies than, the more dramatic classical piano synth pop stuff she was doing on her previous record. But there is such an English feel to all of her music. And there's definitely some Lana Del Rey inspiration. I mean, Lana Del Rey is not the first to do music like this, but, Birdy talks about how she wrote a lot of this record, recorded a lot of it in Nashville, which gives a bit of a country tinge to some of the songs, as well as some of it in Malibu. So she was going to the West Coast, to Topanga, and she was definitely kind of channeling her Lana Del Rey aesthetic a little bit, going into the 60s, 70s indie folk sound. And then, of course, she also finished a lot of this, wrapping it up during the global pandemic in the UK. So it's had a lot of different locales influencing it. She says the album was originally going to be called The Witching Hour, which actually I think would have been a more interesting title for it. I do think that Young Heart is a bit of a generic album title, but it's one I will let slide because I do think it really thematically encapsulates the energy she is going for. However, The Witching Hour is just a little bit more whimsical, and I would have liked that, but I totally get why she chose to go the way she did. Because she sings about, for her, the witching hour was always around 4 a.m. She was definitely leaning into her nocturnal habits because, like, I can relate so much to in the winter months. That was when all of the creative inspiration was coming to her. That's when she felt like she needed to write all of these songs. And so a lot of the songs came to her at those wee hours of the morning. And so Voyager, the first track on this record, we seek into. This is a moment in a relationship where you have to be really careful about your footing around a really sensitive issue. The issue of, like a ship moving on from the harbor, sometimes you've got to be the one to initiate a breakup. But you know that your partner's gotten really comfortable and it might really blindside them. So how do you break it to them easily? You're planning on leaving them and they're not going to be aware of it yet. And how do you justify it to them? Watching satellites lying in the grass, I know our days are numbered, but you don't know that I feel that. You don't hear solitude calling me away. And the hardest part is part of me wants to stay. I won't wait for you, I'm already gone, like moonlight leaves with the dawn. I won't wait for you, the night's too long. I'm a voyager and I voyage on. And I think the melody of this track with the airy instrumental guitar mixed with the very soft, delicate piano chords introduces us to the sonic soundscape of this record so brilliantly. Birdy's voice is so warm and welcoming, yet of course it is also very melancholy, it's very wistful. It's got an edge of daydream to it that I think hints at where Birdie's head is really at, where she wants to go. And of course, thematically, that is the theme of the song. She really does feel like she's kind of looking off and wondering what it might be like in the great unknown, which is after this relationship, which is a bit of a stark difference. For a lot of the other songs, she's sort of feeling a little bit more victimized to some extent. She's expressing a little bit more of that in the breakup of the relationship, speaking about how it was so difficult for her. Whereas on this track, she admits that it's difficult, but she's also really alluding to how it's much more of a positive thing for her than anything else. And we don't see so much of that on some of these other tracks, but this whole record does have a positive spin on a breakup. I mean, it bridges the gap between those negative, dark feelings, those lonely, dark nights, and that place you can get to when you fully accept and love yourself. And that usually comes from having a good amount of solitude and being more comfortable living on your own, living for yourself, and not being constantly attached to someone else to validate your own happiness and self-worth. A lot of these songs feel like they could just get swept up in the breeze, like some leaves just dancing with a nice English countryside brisk breeze. And I feel like there is that just sort of ballet to the melodies that we're seeing here, that wistful rush of wind on a 60-degree nice May English countryside day. So Loneliness is one of the more produced songs on this record and one of the songs that got a really interesting music video. And I'm ashamed that I didn't end up talking about it in its own video. It's getting hard to hide this tainted lullaby. I'm talking in my sleep. The sky is falling down. It's getting closer now. It's getting hard to breathe. Your hold has kept my heart in chains. For so long, I've waited for it to break. Something in the air's got me feeling you're here again. And I was missing the dark, but now you're near again, watching the clock hand fall asleep on us. Oh, I've been losing my mind in these sweet dreams of loneliness. She says that this song was actually written around the time of Beautiful Lies, but she decided to shelve it because she wasn't exactly feeling it for that time, and came back to it years later, realizing that, she had been living quite a solitary existence for quite some time by this point, being in these hotel rooms and shutting the door, very isolated in these big cities, and trying to appreciate at least, the beauty of that isolation. I think this song really comes to a lot of people's, in the time of the global pandemic, ringing true and ringing more relatably to us than it would have before. But for someone who, has always been one parrot and beard short of a hermit, I've definitely learned to savor and appreciate loneliness. Though I don't like to call it loneliness because loneliness implies, a negative emotion. I like to call it solitude, but she chooses to use that word. But it definitely is allowing her, some space to really grow and think, allowing her to really dissect her thoughts. She explores just all of this in, processing her dreams and understanding, how her heart is feeling. You really do need that silence, that quiet. Me, myself, and I, we're gathering ourselves together. There's a feel of like all of these distinct threads of this tapestry that became really tangled coming together in the melody of this song, and all of the, strings and instruments coming together, all of the guitar chords. It has just a real assemblage to it. I don't know how else to describe that, but it actually is very uplifting, very, very uplifting in sound. And one of my favorite songs that's really grown on me as we've had it for several months now. Track number 4, The Other Side. She says that what she really is talking about when she sings, I'll see you on the other side, doesn't have to be quite so morbid as, the afterlife, which is how I interpreted it. She wrote this more recently in Nashville during the pandemic. It kind of had a lot of relatability to us getting through that, and when we're able to be more, physical and present with one another again. And if you're just going through a hard time, that you're going to be there for them and stand with them, hold them, and be with them at the other side. If I lose you on the borderline, I'll see you on the other side. One of the stronger melodies for sure on this record. There's a real wanderlust to the construction of it and the way it just rushes forward. Like it just has a real impetus behind it in the melody and the tempo. And in the instrument buildup. So I'm a real fan of this track. It was one of those instantly ear-grabbing songs for me. You can really hear her British accent on those verses. It's just very close to the microphone, which I really appreciate. Not a lot of effects on her voice in those moments. So track number 5 was the lead single, Surrender. I'm not going to really spend too much time in the interest of brevity talking about this James Ford produced track, but I will just say it's a song that I'm lukewarm about. It's not a bad song, it's just not the most grandiose of a song that I would expect from a lead single. There's a lot of weight on this song's shoulders that I'm not entirely sure it lives up to. However, the things I like about it, I like the choral effect on her voice. I like the samples of those bird-like vocals that she does coming in through the melody. This song has a lot of that. And I definitely appreciate, that staring up into the sky and whimsical, sort of childlike, ecstatic expression in the chorus of wanting to surrender to something greater, which could be love, which could be solitude, depends on how you choose to view it. So Nobody Knows Me Like You Do, track 6, was not a song I was ready to hear so early in the track listing. Get your tissues out for this one. For those who've watched my Beautiful Lies review, you will know Unbroken, one of the piano ballads on that record, is my favorite song of hers. And I think this is the track that comes the closest to matching it for me in terms of really, really powerful, melodramatic, expressive piano ballads. And the pain in her voice is so apparent. It's a very stripped back song. It is just her and the piano. And dark are my days now that I face them on my own. So long are the nights now that I'm sleeping here alone. And after all of this time, it's still just as hard to see you go. 'Cause nobody knows me. Nobody knows me like you do. She pines in such an endearing way that really tugs at you. It's the chorus that really gets you. She helped finish it. She finished it in lockdown, just in the piano at home. It was a song she was having a real hard time to put the finishing touches on. Because yeah, if you spent so much time with someone, the heaviest feelings you can feel is this, what do I do now when no one else fills the void that you left behind? How could someone else do that? You're the person who, and in those moments when you're so tunnel visioned, this is how it feels as the world collapses in around you. And I must admit, there's such a nostalgic melancholy to this melody that even though I can't exactly relate because I've never been in a relationship, a long-term relationship, and had it fall apart, I can imagine how it might feel. And so it really puts me in that time and place. And I can relate it to just missing people that I once knew, even if it wasn't romantic. It is just a really tragic emotion to express that she does so beautifully. River Song, track number 7. No, it is not a play on the Doctor Who character. For any Doctor Who fans, I don't remember that much about it, but there was a character named River Song. So anyone who picks up on that little Easter egg, I'm not sure if Birdy is aware of that, but that's what it first made me think of when I saw the title. But this song is very, simplistically stated about a river. It's about an homage to the power of rivers. Rivers are very ancient things, and she's speaking to it. She's trying to gain any sort of wisdom she can from its innate nature. And it really crescendos. I was really surprised by how much with the strings and everything we build up. This is one of the other songs where there's a lot more layers to it instrumentally, which I think helps stand out amongst so many of the other, guitar, piano, solely paired tracks we've got on this record. If you strip the melody back, it's definitely something Joni would sing. She has a song called Just Like a River Does, so there's that pairing and allusion to rivers. We've got Joni's song River and Water. It's just something that folk female music is always going to have a special place in my heart for when it is sung about. And I think that there's a lot of that being channeled here. Another season turns the page, living in a kind of dark age. Could you light the way? Does the feeling ever die? Can you understand how strange it is to be alive? It's a really sublime meditation on, it's sort of like a Buddhist sentiment, expressing this emotion upon seeing the river and how it is constantly flowing, yet it's all kind of unified. A river represents, impermanence in Buddhism, and impermanence is basically the cornerstone of existence. We cannot be attached to anything. That is the Buddhist way. And I've been just getting back into that Buddhism a little bit. That's why it's coming up in this review. But you can never hold a river. It will always flow out of your hands. And I think that that sentiment is something that is hard to accept, but it's one of the keys, as they say, to achieving nirvana, is understanding and appreciating that all things are impermanent, that nothing will stay the same forever. When viewed through the lens of relationships, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it also is an acceptance that I think one needs to fully mature, understand. And of course, the mystery of life itself, water, we come from water, power of that. It's just a lot to contemplate, and I love that Birdy is going there. On secondhand news, Birdy is admitting her faults, but she's also admitting that she can't take what other people are saying too seriously. You need to take it with a pinch of salt, especially in the instance of a breakup. You might be very curious as to how the other party is doing, and you might hear their friends talking about how that person might be, and maybe they're embellishing it. Maybe it's the truth. You don't know for sure. You can take what they say as the bitter truth, but don't throw it all away on secondhand news. So if it's negative, take it with a pinch of salt. Don't let it get you down. Don't self-destruct, which she admits that she has to do. I'm a book of mistakes is the opening line, which I think is a really relatable sentiment for any of us who are trying to navigate through our 20s especially. And it's just getting worse. Every new one I make is a rumor you heard. Because these days I'm self-destructive the way I love. I push away every chance because it's never enough. I mean, being your inner saboteur, being the ultimate saboteur of your own relationships is something that I think all of us will harshly judge ourselves for. And sometimes it's not fair that we do that. And sometimes you need to give yourself a little bit more grace and space and say, look, you're viewing this a little too myopically. You need to understand the bigger picture here. You need to look at things in a little bit more of a positive way. You cannot live in regret. It is what it is. Like, it's just a very, I think, wise meditation, like all of these songs are, on ways that you can grow after a breakup and enjoy, well, not enjoy, but enjoy being solitary and not also harping on about the past and ruminating over and over and over on things you could have done or should have done to save a relationship. And it doesn't even have to be about a relationship. It can be about anything. The melody on this one wasn't as strong to me. It's definitely grown on me because, again, we've had it for several weeks. In the context of the whole record, I will happily listen to it, but it's definitely not one of the songs I would seek out to listen to individually. The melody just isn't quite there for me in the same way. Deepest Lonely. So Deepest Lonely is actually a very distinctive song. It's very different, I think, in the fact of its construction. It's not built just simply on instrumental chords from like the guitar or the piano. It's starting out a cappella with the hand clap, "Echoes Through My Heart," which has a very sing-song, catchy melody to it. It's then sampled and the backbone of pretty much the entire track. And then we've got just these brilliant entrances of piano and guitar to help flesh it out. I think it's a really clever way to create a song, and it's one of the most memorable for that reason. Also, lyrically, I think this might be one of the most relatable songs. I felt like it was the one that speaking to me the strongest. Oh, my deepest lonely, why don't we waste another day staring out my window in the morning rain? Oh, my deepest lonely, they never listen anyway. In the witching hour while the city sleeps, we're wide awake. When it's dark clouds overhead, it's me and you again. So on those rainier days, on those days where the sun don't shine, look who I have in front of me in the mirror. Once again, it is good old me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this song has just a bitter acceptance to the fact it's not honestly really a positive or negative song. It just is a statement about solitary life that I think is extremely endearing to listen to. It's very visceral. I think that it really tugged at a part of me that just felt spoken to. It felt like my inner hermit was being massaged a little bit by listening to the way this song's coming across, because she is admitting that being lonely can make you very, very dark. It can make you very jaded. It can make you very heavy. But there is also a freedom to it, and that's allowing her to create all of this music, and it's that sort of blissful solitude. It's like blissful and heavy at the same time. And she calls it a sweet escape, but is that really a euphemism for something darker? Is she pontificating on how being alone is a negative thing for you that eats away at you over time? Or does it actually really light your fire? And I think there's a balance that needs to be struck. And I like that she's not picking a side here on this song. She is really just breaking down what loneliness can be, and meditating on it in a way that does not cast aspersions one way or the other on how you should live your life. Because a lot of the time we don't have a choice. We wake up and we're by our lonesome. Birdy is an introvert. I think it's very apparent. I am very much an introvert, and we need that time to be alone. So that's not something we should feel ashamed of. But how much time is enough is going to be, healthy for us? That's always a question that goes on in our back of our minds. And she admits sometimes maybe she indulges a little too much in it. And that's something that we all introverts have to sort of work towards. But at the end of the day, we can't beat ourselves up too much about it, because at the end of the day, it is the part of ourselves that we need to survive. And that's something that is a real powerful route to self-acceptance that I think growing up we always want to shy away from, because we think, oh, we don't want to give in to our hermit tendencies. We don't want to go down that route. That cannot lead somewhere good. Well, you have to be careful, but maybe just maybe it's not as actually as harmful as you might think. It's all about your perspective. On track 10, Lighthouse, we get a little bit more lighthearted. She calls this song cheesy. I do think it's a little bit more simplistic in the way that she's just singing about a relationship and using the lighthouse as a metaphor. I think we've heard this a million times, but there's still something so endearing about that same old sort of folktale we fall for all over and again. I think this is maybe the most country sounding song on the record as well. The country instrumental is really strong here. So we have a minor interlude here. It's just a minute long. It is Frédéric Chopin's Waltz in A minor. This is a piano song that she actually played a lot as a kid. She was taught by her mom, and so it has a lot of sentimental value for her. And she just likes to play it. So she wanted to play the opening stanzas for us here. And I actually wish it was longer, because it only just starts getting its footing before it's over. And Chopin's music is a lot. Like, it is very interesting sonically to listen to. And I think that it's a very it's a very smart choice to intersperse amongst the record, because, hey, her music does have that classical edge to it that makes her very elegant. And I really like that she's flexing on us a little bit with that. Yeah, put that Chopin interlude in there. We'd like to see it. We'd like even more of that, please. Track number 12, Evergreen. Nobody knows my love. With a kiss, in the gods we hide away. Nobody ever looks up, like the heavy summer haze. Birdy says this is probably her favorite song on the album. And I agree, it's definitely a standout for me as well. It's a very simple melody, and it just carries us on. It's like a nice gentle wave, kind of just up and down, like nothing tumultuous. We've got a swelling orchestra behind her, some strings to just glide us through this melancholic reflection on two lovers pontificating one on the other. It's actually quite esoteric in that I don't think it's just purely singing about another lover, but more kind of grandiosely speaking about one's path through life, navigating the turbulent waters, finding that place you've been looking for, whatever that represents for you. Nobody knows my love, nobody knows but us. That could mean two people who just are the only ones who understand fully why they work so well together. That it could also be me, myself, and I. No one knows what keeps me going, what makes me tick the same way I do. And so it can be very much an insular sort of song pointing us in the direction of what keeps us moving forward positively. Or it could be about two people who constantly come back to each other over the ages. Maybe it's like that kind of love story where it's like reincarnation and we find our twin flame over and over again. It has that sort of sweet sentimentality. On Little Blue, we have an allusion, though I find it hard to believe. Birdy says that she was not aware that there was a song called Little Green off of Joni Mitchell's iconic album Blue, but I find that hard to believe that Birdy didn't know that when writing this. But that's what she says. She swears she's not copying. In the track, she is alluding to, blue is often symbolized as a color of grief. It's a very powerful color for emotion. And usually it represents something a little bit more melancholy. And so she is referencing Little Blue, personifying it as sort of like this little pet that walks beside her, or constantly comes back to her after she sets it loose. It's sort of like that stray cat. You're like, all right, I feed you here and there, but you're meant to go and live on your own. You don't need to sleep on my, by my front door every night, because it makes me want to bring you in and pet you all the time, which if you personify that as grief, it's probably not a good thing. But sometimes you really just don't want to let that go. One of the most Joni sounding songs on the record, for sure. I don't want to bring Joni up too much, but it's very laid, very stripped back, very soft, very delicate, and very beautiful. Celestial Dancers. I was really relieved to hear a song that went in this esoteric direction from her. This song has a little bit more production to it. And I do appreciate that. We definitely have a little bit more interesting keyboard work, some interesting instrumentals and synth layering that we don't see on anywhere else on this record. And I feel like it would have fit a little bit more at home on Beautiful Lies, which is why I love it so much. Here we are, just floating with the moon and the stars, just waiting for something, a little spark. I don't know what it is, but when it comes, I'll know it when it comes. Asking questions of the stars. Celestial Dancers is only referenced once, but you know that this is what the whole thing is about. Looking up at the night sky and feeling that immense emotion from, all of the questions and mysteries of the universe that come down upon you upon the viewing. The back and forth rhythmic melody really captivates you. It gets you enthralled in this sort of swirling energy around the instrumentation and the lyrical subject. Spinning in orbit, the way that she vibrates in the delivery of spinning in orbit, it really gives you a hypnotic edge to the bridge, which is my favorite part of the song. It's repeated like a mantra. Again, a little bit more of a country sensibility on New Moon, the penultimate track. This was one of the last songs written for the record. Tonight there's a new moon, and it's all going to change. She admits in the pre-chorus that she had been slipping back into her old ways, and that she might feel as though she's not made any progress, or she hasn't, built upon the mistakes that she's made in the past. And something that, I get very caught up in all the time is this idea around rebirth and constantly trying again, getting a second chance. And symbolically, new moons are always used as like this symbol of that. And so she is alluding to the fact that you do always get a second chance. There always is a tomorrow, and it'll all fall into place if you just trust in the movement of time and your learning and growth process. Eventually, you'll look back and feel very differently about how things once were. And it's a very wise way to understand growth and time. And it's something that takes, at least for me, it takes a lot of practice for me not to get too caught up in constantly obsessing over when is the next moment that I can tabula rasa, so to speak, erase all of my mistakes and move forward and then, never make another mistake. You can't think that way. You've got to understand that you're still going to stumble and you're still going to trip up, but that doesn't invalidate the growth you've made in the past. You just need to let things move. You just need to let things go as they do, and understand there'll be good times and bad times coming forward, but always try and work towards improving, because there always will be another moment for a new moon. So yeah, it's a really nice, again, whimsical comes to mind, melody expressing a sentiment that is very close to my heart. And finally, Young Heart, the thesis statement song of the record, the longest song of the record, and I think the jazziest. We've got a little bit more of a jazzy piano play going on here in the chords. She talks about listening a lot to Etta James and Nina Simone, so I can hear that in the jazzy inflection she gives to a lot of this track. I'll admit, though, the pre chorus is my favorite because it transcends that. She jumps up an octave and really leans into her gorgeous soprano falsetto vocal. And you are my light, and I'm so lonely, and I know that I must go, lost in the night, but it's only a moment. Pray that you'll find your way home. We sink back down to the sultry rhythm, the sultry chords. Goodbye, my love, no crying. Let's not leave each other like this. Because even though our hearts are breaking, and through everything that's changing, I'll keep on loving you. I'm just a young heart, and I'm making mistakes, and I'm learning as I go. And you are too, so we have to be easy on ourselves in this breakup and in looking back at what was. And understanding where we are now is not always where we are ever going to be. We're going to be changing, we're going to be growing, but I need to make sure that I'm not going to stay stagnant, that I'm not going to be, caught up in heartbreak forever. Because there's a resolute sort of affirmation that she will move on. This track, in putting it pen to paper, I'm sure was very cathartic for her in summarizing how the pain you feel, with young, powerful, deep romance cannot govern you forever. And I do like how she juxtaposes the pre-chorus with the verses and the chorus, because there is that resolute energy of accountability coming through so powerfully. And then on the pre-chorus, she does sort of just interject those wistful, pining moments of loneliness that are still coming through to her. There's just this barrage of feelings and emotions that come through, positive and negative, but a lot of the time negative when you're dealing with a breakup and you're just trying to reach some sort of stability so that it's not constantly like hot and cold and you're not feeling so down or so, emotionally weighted by all of it. But it comes in and then it comes out. And it's just this interesting interjection of those moments where you feel so soft and fragile. And yet then you come back to yourself and you feel grounded and you know what you need to do. So overall, I think it's a great way to wrap up the record. It's not my favorite song, but it's definitely one that in the context of the whole record summarizes it quite beautifully. Boy, I mean, she really goes there with these piano melodies. I don't know, what my expectations could have been. Definitely, I mean, I definitely am thinking of Beautiful Lies, and you can compare it and be like, well, maybe this album doesn't quite transport you the same way as that one did sonically. But at the same time, I still think this album has so much emotional storytelling wrapped up in it that in some ways it's even richer than Beautiful Lies was. Just because it's expounded upon it, there's more songs, there's just such a growth and there is such a maturity to this record, and it feels very present. And I don't know. Yeah, you really feel like you're really getting in a glimpse of who Birdy really is. Not saying that Beautiful Lies you didn't, but there was a little bit more of a disconnect kind of coming off on that record where it was, this you just really feel that she is in it when she is writing these lyrics, singing this song. It's like she's living it in that exact moment in the recording. It just comes off so candidly. And I think that sticks out. And makes this record so, candid is a good word, I think, for it. I think that reflects in some ways the playful album art. In Beautiful Lies, it was very editorialized and posed, and it was like this very planned photo of something, recreating something. And on this record, it's sort of like, no, I'm just going to snap a photo of you in this moment when you're talking to me and smiling and you're giggling. And it's not all planned out in the head of the time. And something I think that represents the album really well. I think the color palette and everything about it, the earthy tones, it represents the, springtime energy I think this album has. I think spring was a great time to put it out because, like I said, it gives me the hope of spring, the more sunlight and all of that, and also coming out of winter, coming out of a very lonely kind of solitude kind of existence, especially with the pandemic for a lot of us. I think we can all very much relate to this. So this is a really strong record, and it's really, really hard for me to rank it against Beautiful Lies or her earlier stuff, though I'm not as big a fan of her earlier music. I will just outright say it. I just think that Beautiful Lies is on a whole other level. I agree that this one is as well. Her earlier stuff, she was just finding her footing. So yeah, I'm very impressed. I knew that I was going to be very impressed. I think my favorites are definitely Deepest Lonely is number one. Celestial Dancers. I will always have a spot for a nice, really haunting, esoteric moment. Nobody Knows Me Like You Do. Gorgeous, unbroken vibes. She even sings Unbroken, and she mentions Unbroken in the song, the word. Let's see. Loneliness would be probably number four, and then maybe The Other Side would be number five. Those would probably be my top five, though it really is hard to choose once we get there because there are a lot of songs that I really do like. And it really is just like an album you want to put on the whole way through. Though some of the songs do sonically sound a little similar. There isn't quite so much of a variation in sound on this record as there was on the previous. That's just because she's using less instruments. You know, it's very stripped back, so that's what you get. But if you're ready for that ride, you're definitely in for an emotional one. And I highly recommend if you are not familiar with her music because she is horrendously underrated by the mainstream. So I would really love to see, more people talking about her music. So with all that being said, I will leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know in the comments what your favorite songs were, what your thoughts are on this record, if you agree, disagree. Like this video if you did, please, that helps out a lot. Subscribe if you are new. Like I said, all those Birdy reviews I've already done will be linked in the description. And I will see you all in my next video. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light, you all. Bye.